I'm not reciting that all over.
I think we can just acknowledge that, huh? It's good.
Did you get your question answered?
Partially. So I'm just wondering, like the Commerce Agency and our other third-party collectors out there that we sell it off outright rather than contract to collect. I know you end up selling it for cents on a dollar, but
And I'm aware of.
I don't believe that's a possibility. I don't think it's a feasible possibility. Mary Alice, do you mind?
I could speak before her.
Sure, okay.
Because I may alleviate some of that unless they have some questions for her. Anybody else have anything to add before I do? Okay. So I had a conversation probably 2 or 3 days ago with the treasurer. And I feel as much as heartburn as it's caused to write off this chunk of change here, which is quite significant. She was confident, and I am under the understanding that these are pretty much uncollectible at this point. I trust the treasurer, I trust her judgment on these things, and was also reassured that going forward, we have a much cleaner process, and the likelihood of this happening again is slim. So with that being said, as much as I don't like it, I will be voting in favor of writing this off, in hopes that we do have our ducks in a row now. So if anybody, councilmen, have any questions for our treasurer, she is on Zoom. If you guys feel the need to ask her any questions, I stopped into her office this week. And Councilor Bragdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If it's okay to address her, Ms. Cullen, as Councilor Higgin pointed out, is the last 2-3 years unredeemable at all? I get maybe 5, 6, 7 years in the past, but how about within the last, 2-3 years?
Mary Alice, if you can hear us, you could unmute
There
and
she is.
hey, there we are.
Gotta have time.
Oh, no, on your phone, not sure how to unmute. Okay.
She's saying no.
Oh, wait, maybe I could.
I'm not on.
Can you try to just tap the screen and maybe the microphone picture would show up in the bottom and you could
Maybe.
then tap again?
No, I'm thinking that we're.
That's okay. I feel very confident that her answer would be no. Could you just give us a head bob whether or not that's correct?
That's a frustration, Bob.
That is-
No,
That's a
it's not.
question.
I feel like this is why I don't do this.
Sure, yeah, that's okay.
Sorry, Mary Alice, to put you through that. Okay, we're gonna move on.
Fantastic.
Councilor Bragdon. So any other council discussion? Seeing none, down to the public. Announce yourself and state your name and address, please. The mic maybe.
Thank you. My name is Sandra Sullivan, 104 Sunset Drive. And $216,000 is a lot more than a chunk of change. And it's a lot more than $5 charges. You are incorrect in saying that this is what the insurance would not pay that was billed. The way insurance actually works is you turn in $800 charge, the insurance approves $500, they pay $300, you are responsible for the other $200. if I don't pay a $200 water bill, I'm gonna get a lien on my house. If I don't pay a $200 sewer bill, I'm going to get a lien on my house. Why hasn't that process and other processes, there's a lot of ways to collect medical money. $216,000 would pay for the assessment or the reassessment that we're talking about coming up. That this is a ridiculous amount of money for this town to be writing off. And especially, I agree with Councilor Bragdon, that maybe things from 2010, you can't collect. But things from 2020, 21, 22, absolutely you can collect. And if you have a collection agency that's refusing to do it, you need to fire them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Any other? Mary Ellis, have you connected?
I think, can you hear me now?
We
Yes.
can hear you. Thank you.
All right, I mean, I think you've got to break this down into a few pieces. There's about 40,000 of that was with the Millinocket Regional Hospital when they provided the service. That ended in December of 2018. That has gone through collections, been reviewed, and that just is not collectible. That's already gone through the process. Now, the Higgins AR piece of this, when we went with Higgins, which was around October of 2018, the process of systematically reviewing the AR in determining what needed to be written off to collections didn't happen. That happened with Millinocket Regional Hospital. So when you're looking at a $40,000 number with Millinocket Regional Hospital, that was what was left when we closed the service with Millinocket Regional Hospital that had not gone to collections. At one time, the uncollectible AR with Millinocket was a regional hospital, providing the service was $134,000. And we would systematically send that to collections. They would review it, and that's what would come back to the council for the approval to acknowledge that that was uncollectible. So when you're looking at the Higgins amount, which right now is $175,000, that part of that piece of the receivables would have been, comparing it to Millinocket Regional, would have been presented to the council as not being collectible. And when I look at the aging at the time that Higgins stopped the service, there was about $80,000 that, had we been doing it the way we were doing it with Millinocket Regional, that I feel would have been written off anyway. So then you're looking at the other part of that, which again would, through a period of time, would have gone to collections, and they would have reviewed it and tried and come back with us on their feedback on what they felt was collectible and what wasn't. And it would have been a very small percentage based on our history. Now, we were paying someone else to maintain that AR. There were payments that came in after the Higgins that would have to be applied to this AR to get it down to a listing that you would send to collections. I don't know if the ambulance department has those files. Again, we were paying someone else to maintain that AR. So you have to break this down into sections. 40,000 Millinocket Regional, in my opinion, that has got to be written off. Then you're down to the Higgins part of this, of which 80,000 of that would have been, in my opinion, written off through our process that we went through with Millinocket Regional. So it's not as simple as looking at that. I know that number seems large, but when we went with the Higgins AR, the process of systematically reviewing what was going to collections, never got off the ground with us, going to the council and asking for approval to write off what had already been reviewed with collections. So, I mean, we can send a list to the Thomas Agency, but it's not going to be an updated list. To see if they want to see if they're willing to do something with it. And if it's got to be converted into right now they're getting information from AMB, which is in an electronic format. They'd have to look at all of this and see if it can even be converted into their system.
Do we have any other further questions for the treasurer? Council Bragdon?
What would be the cost at having them look at those files to see if they could be converted? Is it going to be like a drawn out monthly process? It's going to take several months? Is it a couple of weeks? Like, what's the time frame if we do decide to take that route?
Well, first of all, the list does not reflect what payments, when, for example, when we stopped with Higgins, there were still some payments that came through that have not been updated to that accounts receivable list. So that list is going to contain some accounts that were paid off. But haven't been identified on that list of having been paid off because some of those payments came in from insurance companies.
So there's some monies out of this $215,000, almost $216,000 that has been paid.
No, that right there is what has not been paid. But that is, that encompasses two different sets of receivables books.
Personally, I'm in favor of seeing if this company would be interested in looking at it and seeing if it's even plausible or able for them to transfer into their format to be able to look at some of them, even the ones in the last few years. I get the 40,000 from MRH from December 2018 and possibly the 80,000 mentioned from Higgins account. But I'm curious about the remaining $135,000 that could potentially be some of it saved. I mean, every penny's, money that goes back to the taxpayer, even if it's just a little bit. So I'm in favor of seeing if the company would be able to salvage any of that monies. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Bragdon. And we are down to.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have a question after listening to Mary Alice. So when we talk about collecting money and going after these receivables, are we going after, and just because I don't know, insurance companies or individuals to pay bills that are that old? Who are we getting money from if we were to get money back?
It's going to be whatever is detailed on that list. If there was a service provided for, obviously for a person, what portion has been billed to the insurance company and what portion is the patient's responsibility? It could be both. It could be just the patient.
So in other words, it's very complicated. And if it's the patient, we just know the economy, probably we're not going to get the funds from the patient. I know the hospital has to write off a lot of these kind of claims and it counts as free care. Is there anything like that for the town benefit? I don't want to say benefit. I'm not sure I'm speaking right about that, but on our balance sheet or audit, is it just noted or does it count towards anything like the hospital?
I'm sorry, could you ask me that again?
Does that make sense?
There's
there's no benefit. Yeah.
I mean, as far as
Yeah.
on the town's books, we have what has been billed, and what at the end, what has been collected, obviously, I mean, what's been billed, and then you reduce it by what's been collected and what has been adjusted as not collectible, which you get into like insurance payments, what they will cover, like Medicare, let's say. So the balance is what is left to be collected. When we get to the end of the fiscal year, we have to, we write the receivables down to only what's outstanding within 90 or 120 days. But I mean, we do have the list of what has not been collected, the billing. Now, when we're talking about these old receivables also and sending them to the collector, the other thing I don't know if it exists is going to be if we even have the billing information for the patients, but for the people that are on this AR. That's something we will have to check into. Because again, we employed a service to manage this receivables. And it's not like the town where, we maintain the tax accounts and the sewer accounts. This was another system that maintained all of this. But I
Thank you, Mary
can
Alice.
check.
Thank you, Council Danforth. Down to the public again. Any public comment? Seeing none. Back to the council. Take a vote. All those in favor? 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? 1, 2. Passes 4-2. Order number 38-2023, Councilor Bragdon, would you please read?
Still mine.
Order number 38-2023, providing for approval of iWork for online code permitting and allocation of American Rescue Plan Act funding. Whereas the town manager and code enforcement officer have researched several providers for online code permitting and have decided on a recommendation of iWork, a company used by many Maine towns and cities. And whereas the town manager recommends allocating ARPA funding to cover the cost of the first 3 years of a 5-year contract, covering a trial period and not placing risk on the taxpayer, it is ordered that the Millinocket Town Council authorize the town manager to sign all related documents and enter into the attached agreement with iWork. It is further ordered that the Millinocket Town Council approve the allocation expenditure of local ARPA funding in the amount of $16,000 to cover the first 3 years of the 5-year contract. No contract attached. Ongoing rate is $6,000 annually. If approved, implementation will begin right away at no additional cost for the remainder of this fiscal year.
Second.
Motion made by Council Bragdon, seconded by Council Madore. Council Bragdon, do you want to speak to the order or open it up?
Again, I spoke about it last time. I'm really in favor of this. It's been needed in the town. It's going to severely improve documentation across the town to the citizen, to the citizen to the town. It's going to hold people accountable. It's going to hold the town accountable across the board. And it's also going to open up online, payments and permitting. It's going to make it a lot easier for people who either live outside of town to do their business, or for people at home who are possibly homebound to do their business. So I will be voting in favor of this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Bragdon. Council discussion? Council Higgins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know back when it was brought up with Mr. Manager and I was down talking, you had some concerns. Is it okay to address the manager?
Absolutely.
I know you had some concerns about bringing in some of the lots into the electronic format. Did you get the answers to those?
I did. Yep. The concern and the confusion were based around the public facing version of this software through our website. And how that would deal with our assessing operation. With the funding we recently allocated to doing the GIS mapping of the town for assessing purposes. We were under the impression originally that it would be handled by this software as well, given the mapping portions of it. But what we found out was that is not public facing. And as we expected originally, that will be a separate program, much less expensive than this one, but that will do. But What I was happy to find out in my further research was that the two programs can and do speak to each other in other communities. And we have some examples that we can show anyone who's interested. How eventually you'll be able to, either you're a realtor or a potential home buyer, or you're questioning a certain property, you'll be able to look at the map, click the parcel for that property, see all of the assessing information, the picture of the property, and then it'll be linked to the information that's available from iWork. So you'll be able to see if the code permitting is up to date on any, additions or additional structures, things like that. So they're going to play together very nicely. And I'm actually, I'm very happy with what we were able to find out in the last 2 weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Any other council discussion? I'll say that, I think this in tandem with the new code enforcement officer, I think is certainly headed in the right direction. And, this will kind of streamline and update the permitting process. And after you explained it to me and Council Bragdon explained it to me, I think I'm on board with it. So I think this is a good thing. Technology will work this time. So down to the public. Any comments on order number 38? Seeing none, back to the council. All those in favor? 4, 5, 6, 0. All right, that completes old unfinished business. I would like to now open this up to the special presentation with Randy Dorman, and I think David's on Zoom, correct? David? Just kidding.
He is. Oh, thank you so much. I didn't get you.
He's filling in the
I'm
gaps.
happy to stand here. If you Nope, I got my remote, so I'll make it. I'll make it work.
So once again, for the record, this special presentation is by Andy Dorman and David Hydrick, Great Lakes Hydro America representatives, Brookfield relicensing presentation. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Unfortunately, my colleague Randy Dorman, who's our licensing manager in the Northeast, was unable to attend due to recent illness. But I'm pleased to join and will do my best to answer any questions that he might otherwise have been the person to field. But just understand once we get to the Q&A, it might be somewhat limited. So my name is David Hydrick. Kudos to the council chair for getting the pronunciation right. Most don't. I'm the stakeholder relations manager for Brookfield Renewable in the state of Maine, as well as to the rest of New England. So the intent of tonight's presentation is just to give you a brief high-level overview of the relicensing process as it relates to the dams, hydroelectric power, and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. The items that we're going to discuss here are listed on the slide, but the real focus is about the two subsidiaries that operate in the Katahdin region that are part of Brookfield Renewable US, those being Great Lakes Hydro America and Black Bear Hydro Partners, and to give you a high-level overview of why this relicensing is taking place, why it's important to the communities in which we operate here in the region, and how you may be involved over the course of the next several years as this process moves forward. So before I jump into it, I just want to give you a high-level overview of Brookfield Renewable as a business. So our presence in Maine, we have 38 hydroelectric facilities. We operate on 5 different river systems in the state: the Penobscot, the Kennebec, the Androscoggin, the Union, and the Presumpscot. And we also have 5 wind farms that are operating in the state, as well as 2 battery storage facilities. And those battery storage facilities are right here in the Katahdin region, one in the Powersville substation right across from the East Millinocket Dam, and the other right at the Millinocket Dam itself. We also employ, 115 employees in the state. We pay roughly, I think it's approximately $19 million in property taxes throughout the state, and provide electricity for roughly 480,000 homes. The next slide that I'm going to present just gives you a high-level overview of the hydropower on the Penobscot, with the exception of the Howland Dam, which was decommissioned several years ago. Brookfield Renewable is the operator of those hydroelectric projects. And zooming in just slightly, I want to give you a preview of the region that we're talking about today, the relicensings that are up, and with the exception of Harrington Lake, Ragged Lake, and Mattaseunk, the dams that you see pictured there are the ones that we'll be talking about today. So unfortunately, to the best that we can, we try to avoid using jargon, but sometimes it's impossible to avoid that. So I wanted just to provide some quick definitions, that I may use or that you may hear in the coming weeks, months, and years as these relicensings are underway. The first term here is Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. FERC, as it's known, is the independent federal agency that regulates Brookfield Renewables hydro operations. It's the agency that we're accountable to, and you'll be hearing a lot about them over the course of the next few minutes. Applicant and licensee, those are interchangeable for our purposes. Brookfield Renewable US and our subsidiaries, Great Lakes Hydro America and Black Bear Hydro Partners. We are the current licensee, and we are a future applicant for relicensing of our existing facilities. Pre-application document, that's something that I'll also talk about once we get to the talking very briefly about Weldon, but that is just, as the definition says there, it's a foundational document, and it is a document that really tells us what we already know about a hydroelectric project and its impact on the community as it exists today. And resource agencies, I mentioned FERC just a minute ago. Resource agencies could be anything from U.S. Fish and Wildlife to National National Marine Fisheries Services, more recently known as NOAA Fisheries, the Maine Department of Marine Resources, Maine Department of Inland Fisheries, as well as the Penobscot Indian Nation and other interested stakeholders who have a vested interest in resources along the Penobscot River. And then stakeholders is really my bread and butter on a regular basis, as the job title may have implied. And we really just define that as anybody who may have a vested interest in our operations, wherever they may be. So with that said, talking about relicensing of hydroelectric projects, the FERC relicensing process really matters to us as a licensee. It matters to municipalities which serve as host to our facilities. Matters to businesses in your communities, whether they be businesses that rely directly on the operation of hydroelectric facilities like recreational outfitters or rental companies. It could also be hospitality businesses that provide facilities for individuals who are traveling to enjoy some of the recreational opportunities of a region, and then availing themselves of dining or lodging establishments. It also matters to residents and property owners in the region. Water levels, as you might imagine, is a very popular topic, especially during drought years. And hydroelectric projects are just one way that water levels can be managed and maintained over the course of a given calendar year, and one of the many benefits of hydro projects. And then finally, recreationists, anglers, obviously, boaters, obviously, because of the direct tie to the water resource, but also hunters. As an operator of hydro projects in the region, we make a number of recreational sites available throughout the region, including campsites. And so, whether it be late fall when you might not necessarily think about, being on the water, there are still opportunities to avail yourself of recreational facilities that exist because of the presence of hydro facilities in the region. So with that said, I won't spend too much on this slide. We've already talked at a very high level about what FERC is and what they are, but I just wanted to touch on, outside of relicensing, the role of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and that is really to regulate and oversee energy industries, to do dam safety inspections, and that is in addition to the third-party, independent dam safety inspections that we already do as an operator, as well as it augments the fact that we have a number of dam safety-related engineers on staff that are constantly monitoring our projects. They do environmental inspections, and also, in the case where there are certain management plans that may be in place, make sure that the licensee is complying with those management plans. So the 5-step process for relicensing, looks something like this. I mentioned during the definitions, the pre-application document, which, as I said, that is something that tells us what we know about the project as it exists at the moment and the status quo. There are then usually 2 years of studies. The first year of studies, can focus on anything from like recreational opportunities, as we recently had up in the region. Can also look at things like water quality. And then in the second year, we usually are continuing studies that needed to be continued for whatever reason. As a more recent example, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we were forced to delay several of our recreational studies. That often relies on face-to-face interactions with individuals, having an opportunity to better understand their use of the resources that exist in a region. But also, there were other mitigating circumstances, like COVID could have contributed to individuals spending more time in the outdoors than they might normally have, or could have prevented an opportunity for individuals to recreate. Given the relatively warm winter that we've had so far this year, and doing a snowmobile study may not be as successful or really as relevant to what the recent history of the region would tell us. And so we want to make sure that the studies that we're conducting are an actual accurate assessment of what is being used in the community. Once those studies are done, we jump into the draft license application, which is really our indication to FERC that we're intending to relicense the facilities that we operate, until outlines plans for how we intend to operate those facilities in the future. That provides an opportunity for the public to weigh in, provide their thoughts, feedbacks, any concerns that they may have, and then based on that feedback, we then put together a final license application. Again, that provides another opportunity for the public to review what we're proposing for facility operations, and to have another say and let FERC know, based on that application, what further concerns may exist as it relates to the context, content of the application. So with that out of the way, I'm just going to briefly go over the three different projects over the two different companies that I mentioned that are here in the region. The first being Great Lakes Hydro, since that's the one that operates directly in this community. So with respect to Great Lakes Hydro America, we're talking about two different FERC projects that consist of 6 different developments. So the first one would be the Ripagenus project, which consists of the Ripagenus Dam and McKay Station. The map that you can see there, circled in red, shows the vicinity of the Ripagenus project. Second project is the Penobscot Mills one, which consists of the 5 separate developments of the Millinocket Lake Storage Facility, North Twin, Millinocket, Dolby, and East Millinocket, and that is circled by the black dotted line there. So this is an image of the Ripagenus project, the dam in particular. And then moving on, the next slide shows the scheduled milestones for the relicensing of the Ripagenus project, as well as a map showing the project boundary of the facility as it exists today. So you'll see, it encompasses the vast majority of the lakes there. In the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see Ripagenus Lake, and that inset that is just to the left there shows the Ripagenus Dam there, and then the west branch of the Penobscot continuing down past McKay Station. So the scheduled milestones here, the convenient thing about the Great Lakes Hydro America projects is that they have the same scheduled milestones. So we are looking at in next month, looking at releasing the initial study report, and then ultimately having in May a initial study report meeting here in the region. It's looking at, based on the content and the volume of studies that were conducted, that may actually be a 2-day event. But once we have a specific venue and specific agenda and itinerary available, we'll be sure to share that with the communities, so that you're aware that that event is taking place, and of the opportunity for the public to come and learn about the studies and the results that we gleaned from those. The second year studies will be occurring in 2023. So again, as I mentioned, the snowmobiling situation, that may provide an opportunity, something that we'll try to address in the second year. The draft license application will be looking at May of next year, and then final license application in September of 2024. And again, that'll be the same timeline for the Penobscot Mills project. Speaking of which, this next slide provides just a map showing the 5 different projects circled by various colors. That's just to show you where the respective developments are in the region, and what lakes they are impounding or essentially relying on for their operations. The top is obviously Millinocket Lake. The left we have North Twin in the orange. The yellow is the Millinocket development. green being Dolby, and then black being East Millinocket in the bottom right-hand corner. And then this next slide again, covers that same timeline that I just articulated with images of the North Twin Dam on the top and then the Dolby development on the bottom. So moving on to Black Bear Hydro Partners, that is a facility that is owned and operated below East Millinocket in the town of Medway. It is owned by the subsidiary Black Bear Hydro Partners. It has not begun the relicensing process. That is a process that typically starts about 5 years prior to the need for a license to be renewed. So we are looking at working on the pre-application document. We'll be going through the process of hiring a consultant to assist us with the relicensing of this facility. And so we expect that at the earliest, by the end of September of this year is when we would have that pre-application document available. And then first year studies in 2024, second year in 2025, begin that draft license application in 2026. And then the final license application at the end of March of 2027. And so, wanted to be respectful of your time, understanding that this was just a high-level introduction to the relicensing process, and what at least we hope is the first of many conversations over the many, the coming weeks, months, and years as it relates to the relicensings of these facilities in your region. But with that, be happy to answer any questions to the extent that I'm able. And I certainly appreciate your indulgence, understanding that my counterpart Randy's not here.
Thank you, David.
Appreciate it.
For your prompt presentation. Do I have any council members that have any comments or questions on the presentation? Seeing none, anything from the public? David, if you could, yeah, could you unshare that so I can see if anybody on Zoom? I know. Yeah. All right, seeing none on Zoom, public, Mr. Best.
Thank you. Jimmy Biss, 32 Forest Avenue. I urge the council to certainly support the re-license project. As we know, the dams that we have in the area are very important to us, for flood control and just the hydropower. But for the area itself, for recreation and that, it's very important. Flood control and the recreation on our lakes, the fisheries, it's all. And I can tell you that being involved with this local sportsman club, that they're getting a lot of pressure from a lot of environmental groups, organizations who want to take these dams out. The Natural Resource Council has come out and said specifically, I've got the letter, that they want to take all the dams out on Kennebec and Penobscot. So there's a lot of pressure. So if we can, the dams need to be supported. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Best. Any other public comment?
Charles Prey, 101 Morgan Lane. I'm assisting them in doing their community outreach. But my involvement goes back a lot further than that. I was the sponsor of the legislation that set up Maine's relicensing hydro laws in the 1980s, of which one of the provisions was power behind the gate, which, as Mr. Biss spoke in reference to the importance of these dams to the area for the economic opportunities. These two mill sites, the one here in Millinocket and the one in East Millinocket, depend heavily on having this hydro system in place. It was created in the early 1900s, and in the mid 1930s, so forth, they started doing further economic development opportunities on main rivers. Every single paper mill in this state operated off the use of the water system and the river system. Those water rights were given for the purpose of regional, rural economic development. And this hydro system is very important for the economic development of these communities to come back to a real economic boom for us. It isn't going to be what it used to be, but we're depending on that hydro system. I grew up in that system, grew up from 1953 to 2008 at Ricogenos Dam. And my father was an electrician in the hydro system. So I from a very young age, understood how important that is for the mills when they operated. And it's going to be the lifeblood for the future of these communities. One of the things we have done, or they have done, is they briefed the town of Medway, East Millinocket, and you all of this week based upon the days that those selectmen bodies and this council hold their regular meetings. And I think every one of those communities understood what those boards of selectmen, the discussion with East Millinocket, I thought was very informative and a good exchange between selectmen members and David and Randy, senior moment there. But I think anything that the council can state their support of this relicensing process. As Jimmy also mentioned, there are other interests, and as David mentioned, the Brookfield is looking for comments from the public about their concerns, such as boat landings and water levels and the things that he mentioned. And obviously, those things are important. It's something that FERC has to take into consideration. But paramount to, I think, these communities is keeping this system operating. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prey. Any other public comment? Being none, Mr. Gagne? Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Excellent. Back to the council. Any comment? Council Danforth?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, David, for coming. I guess you stood in for Randy. Tell him his job might be at risk. You did a great job. Thank you for the information. I appreciate public comment at this time. I'm listening, taking it all in. I'm very aware of how important it is for economic development around here. And look forward to maybe that May 7th public meeting. And hopefully, I know you'll probably be passing on information so the manager can share it, that we can get some public input at that point too. Thank you for coming.
Any other council comment? Council Madore?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, we had recently had legislation where it allowed companies other than paper mills to take advantage of having power sold to them directly behind the gate, which has been a big asset to having, say, companies like Brookfield be able to go ahead on our mill site and sell power to companies that might develop on the site directly, rather than have to go through the transmission system that we all share with other, utilities. So I think this goes hand in hand with that. The legislation is in, the regulation is in. It allows sites like ours to redevelop. And the biggest portion of that is going to be with the dams and dam relicensing. So I think it all goes hand in hand. I think it's important. And I think it is going to be a very vital piece for the town of Millinocket moving forward, to be able to have that ability to be able to have business go behind the gate, buy directly behind the gate, and save the transmission costs. And let us be competitive with other states and their fees that they charge for power. So I thank you very much for your presentation. And I look forward to your efforts going forward to get the dams relicensed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Council Madore. Any other council comment? I have a question. I assume that you'll at some point be looking for a letter of support from the municipality.
That would certainly be helpful if the community is willing to do that. The process for doing that would be filing on the docket with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission as we begin and go through the relicensing process. And we'd certainly be happy to be in touch with the community and let them know.
So just for time reference, your next public session would be?
We'd be looking at doing something in the month of May to go over the studies as it related to the relicensings of the Rippergenus and Penobscot mills.
All right. Well, I think we'll get a consensus with the council at some point, and if we're all in agreement, then the manager will be in touch with you.
Wonderful. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you for your
to be here tonight.
presentation. All right, now to the exciting town manager's report.
Exciting. I feel like that should have a drum roll or a parade. Again, I promise I'm very funny. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The FY '24 budget is in full swing. We're receiving the individual worksheets from each department this week. And then next week, we begin to compile all that information and start tweaking, making adjustments as needed. As I've alluded to in numerous meetings, some of the glaring concerns we're looking at cost wise is really just investment in our own staff and employees and trying to make efforts to continue to fix a broken and neglected pay scale system that's been in place for a very long time. So, you will see changes in that being presented, and we really hope that folks understand the reasoning behind that and open to accepting that. So certainly stay tuned. There's a lot more to come on that. Got many more discussions on that coming up over the next 2 months. Since I submitted this report, we actually did have a closing date on the Elks land. It was meant to be this morning and then it got delayed. So the paperwork is pretty well completed. There were a few lingering questions that needed to be answered from the other side of the conversation, where really the people in charge of both sides at this point have inherited the project on either side. So neither of us were the originators of the deal. So some of the information was a little confusing, and we just needed some more clarity there. Just a reminder. The check for this purchase was approved on a December 22 warrant and is sitting safely in our office. And we did that in preparation to be able to close at any time and take the opportunity for the appointment when it showed up. We are very eager to dive deeper into the planning and development around that site. As we've discussed publicly and at great length, the main goal for that property is to provide a location for our future fire station and possibly fire station public safety building hybrid. The location allows us direct access to from the fire station to the airport, which meets the FAA or TSA requirements for future growth, and then flight service offerings from our airport as well. The other plans for that property include solar leasing, the revenue from which will offset the debt for the purchase. Given the acreage and the amount per acre that's leased, the income from that arrangement would pay off that debt in just a handful of years. So that really is not much of a risk to the community, as had been discussed in the past. The other option out there that we're excited about is the opportunity to provide a number of buildable housing lots. It's certainly an opportunity in that area. Not in all of it. We understand some of it is wet, but we will have an opportunity to cut out in there and offer some housing lots. So that could certainly help with the available housing for long-term in our community and the crunch that's provided by short-term rentals at this point. Our application, Amber's application to Efficiency Maine for the electric vehicles charging stations was approved. We were approved for 80% of the funding, not the 90% that was the top tier. We were approved for the 80% funding on those 4 charging stations. Millenauke's share would be $5,330.40 per charger. The total would be $21,321.60. The good news is that after the work was completed on our Veterans Park electrical update this past summer, we were left with a remaining balance of a roughly $50,000 from that community development block grant that paid for the project. If we do not allocate that funding for use by June, we would lose it. So I'm suggesting that we use that pot of funds to cover the $21,000 to install the EV chargers. That certainly takes the risk and burden off any of our taxpayers for that investment and allows the project to move forward. You know, I certainly don't see Millinocket getting rich off of these chargers, but it will provide some revenue to the community and certainly a lot more convenience to community members and visitors alike as we see more and more electric vehicles on the road. We've been looking at two different options for possible outdoor gym installations in our community. Understanding that the only option at this point is the gym provided by our hospital, which is a great resource, but you know, some are not able to take advantage of it. So far, the leader in that discussion is a company called National Fitness Campaign. They actually are offering some funding towards the project through some support in the state of Maine from Community Health Options. After the funds from Community Health Options, the local contribution would be in the ballpark of $105,000 to $130,000, which certainly could be covered by other grant funding. As everyone knows, we have a dedicated employee of our town to seek these grant funds to accomplish these larger scale projects. The closest National Fitness Campaign outdoor exercise lot is located in Hamden. If anybody's out and about and wants to check out a physical location of one. The other option we're looking at is offered by a company called FitLot. It's a slightly different style of exercise lot with a smaller footprint. Total cost is comparable, around 178. Now that's comparable before the main the Community Health Options funding for the other one, just making that clarification. And, you know, keeping in mind that, you know, grant funding is an option for both of those. The closest FitLot installation is actually in Bangor. It's, if any of you drive along Broadway ever, there's a really cool outdoor gym on the left-hand side there as you're heading towards downtown. Right in the Broadway Park. That was actually supported by AARP. So, you know, another option there. They both seem to be great options. They would provide free access to exercise equipment for anyone in the community. They are adaptable and accessible. And we have identified the rec complex as the potential best location for either. And I think at this point, the guidelines for each of them, they have different rules and regulations from their company, and the size of the lots necessary to install them will be the determining factors, I think, at this point. This is something that the Community Initiatives Director and I had toyed around with conversations over the past several months, and then recently revived the conversation due to some inspiration with from Councillor Danforth and her colleague Brittany at Thrive Penobscot. So they've been leaning in and helping us through that conversation quite a bit, and we'll be offering quite a bit of work and support in the process as we continue through it. At a recent council meeting, I was asked about an update on the security cameras idea for our town parks, our compost pile, and the cemetery. The company that has worked with us up until now, Steve Gardner from East Millinocket, that his business is called North Main Woods Surveillance. They're not going to have the capacity to help us on project package and installation this large and this complicated. However, they've referred us to SCS Communications to discuss getting a quote. That's the company that provides the outer reach broadband locally with the radio signals and things. It's actually a much bigger company that handles a lot of other types of technical business. So we are meeting on Monday of next week around 2 p.m. Not around 2 p.m. It'll be at 2 p.m. To talk about what that'll take with their company and get a potential quote. It's likely that we should put this project out to bid in the big picture. So we'll plan to do that, but they're certainly willing to provide us the information and give us a ballpark of what we're looking at price wise and work wise to help with the RFP. And so two other things that weren't on my original submission that I just want to update on is this past weekend when I was bringing the recycling back, I stopped in to talk to Gene Barr over at the recycling facility at the transfer site. And he reported to me that the traffic and the numbers and the materials in that facility have continued to grow exponentially since we started it, and started to really increase just in the past couple of months. So he was very excited to tell me all about that, and I was really happy to hear it. We're still not at the point to make money off of it at this point, but if we continue in this direction, it'll certainly be a lot more cost effective and start providing revenue to our town. So we still certainly encourage everyone to bring the brown cardboard, their number 2 colored plastic, their clear plastic milk jug type material, and their cans, soup cans, that sort of can. Yeah, keep doing it. That's great. We're still looking at options for larger, louder signage to draw attention to the building. Last but not least, we did receive communication yesterday that we were officially awarded the $50,000 from Penobscot County to go towards our elevator modernization. So that application was submitted by Amber, our community initiatives director, and we certainly thank local Millinocket community member Commissioner David Marshall for his help in putting that through with us. The total package on that modernization will be roughly $150,000. We're expecting a $25,000 contribution in the negotiation of our court lease. And we would round off the second half of that with the 75,000 or so in ARPA funds, local ARPA funds, if the council supports that suggestion. But that was great news to hear as we got into this week. That's all I have this evening. Happy to take any questions, hear any comments.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Appreciate that. Any other council comment on the manager's report? Councilor Higgins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your report, Mr. Manager. I just got a few questions and comments. Looking forward to getting into the budget. It's going to be my first time. It's going to be fun. Facetiously. Now on the EV chargers, just a question is who's going to be responsible for the maintenance of those? Because I know they've had trouble with some of these chargers staying up and running. So if we have 4 chargers there, if 2 of them go down. So just trying to find out who owns that responsibility. On the $50,000, just trying to understand if we don't use it, we lose it. Where would it go? Was that part, because it was before my time here? Did that come from a grant or was it?
Do you want me to answer both of those now, or do you have more?
I got more.
Okay.
I mean,
I'm taking note.
Okay, we can do it that way. Um, On the outdoor gyms, I understand you're right. The only gym other than the high school is White Birches. We do need something in the area for people in the community. So which is why I keep pushing for a community center or a youth center. That'd be a great place for them. These are outdoor facilities, correct? Okay. And I know there's a chance for money to come in with grants and everything, but that's still a lot of money for an outside gym. It really is. I've seen some of these, not these ones in particular, but I've been in several communities throughout up and down the East Coast. I've done a lot of traveling, worked a lot of places, and I've seen a lot of these gyms out there and in some of the rural communities, a lot like ours. And they've got full circuits and everything else, but they don't get used. They got used for maybe the first month. And then the newness wore off. If we're gonna go that way, we just gotta look so it doesn't cost the community if there's a way to come up with the money. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Higgins.
We would own the EV charging stations, so maintenance would be on the town of Millinocket. We would be, we don't have an electrician or anybody on our staff, so unless the public works crew wanted to get trained real quick, but we would be contracting with local electricians that I believe it's Rick Wassikin, who we've used so far with the quote and all of the work towards it. And then, of course, we'll be putting the project out to bid, but it would likely be a local electrician that would be helping us with the project. With potential maintenance, those circumstances. So the original funding for the Veterans Park upgrade came from the state of Maine Economic and Community Development. It's in the form of a community development block grant. It's referred to as CDBG funds. And while the original intent was to do both the downtown sidewalks and lighting and Veterans Park, it had taken several years and the changing of, I don't know how many hands throughout the process, until there was a permanent town manager to kind of finish it through. So the cost of that after, COVID hit, became far more than double what the original thing was. So we had to scale it back and only do half of the project. And out of the, I want to say it was about 350,000 total. We only used about 300 for everything in the Veterans Park. That was the additional 220 lines for vending and the additional overhead lighting, as well as some uplighting on the monument itself. And yeah, that $50,000 would go away in June if we didn't allocate it. So it's not taxpayer money and local taxpayer money, and it's threw that in for you, Jim, and yeah, it's free to us for now. So good. And then the outdoor gym, I agree with you. I think that the usage could ebb and flow pretty drastically, but having it as an option, and certainly if we can do it without hitting the pockets of local taxpayers, that would be the way that I would want to go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Higgins. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Therefore,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question, to the manager, if that's okay, around the CDBG grant. So you say it has to be allocated. That's different than being spent. So do we have to have a plan for it? And then you show the state that we have a plan to spend it down? Because I think using it for the EV charging stations, there'll still be a little bit over $25,000 left. Will we have to spend that by June?
Nope, we just have to report to my contact at the Economic and Community Development Office that we have identified the plan to spend the funds, and then I don't know what the expiration date is on funding, on spending the money, but it's at very least the end of that calendar year. If not more, if we need an extension, but we absolutely have to say what we're going to spend it on if we're going to spend it
Okay,
by June.
so that's helpful.
And
I-
we can, that was brought, that funding was brought up recently, the Economic Development and Sustainability meeting as one of the funding options for different projects. So if we put that, the EV chargers in there, we would still have, like you said, roughly $25,000 left to go towards projects of that committee, if they have suggestions.
Thank you.
It does have to stay in the downtown area, and
Go any place
Yeah.
other than
And that project where it was specifically towards electrical updates or lighting, ideally it would be towards something electrically related or lighting.
Well, and that's
related.
why I wondered if it could fund the cost of a security system, perhaps, when you, on the next page you just talked about. So just,
Yeah.
you don't have
so-
to know the answer to that. It just made me think of that funding
Right.
potentially.
It's maybe at least for a
the
portion of
downtown
it
part.
where it's related
Yeah, I'll
downtown.
just throw that out there. And I just wanted to touch a little bit on the outdoor gym that you brought it up, and we've had some different virtual meetings. It wasn't a Zoom meeting, but it was a virtual meeting with person from the National Fitness Campaign to learn about this opportunity. And I understand, yes, it is a lot of money. So we do need to look for funding sources. And the whole philosophy or the mission behind the National Fitness Campaign is to build a healthy community, get people outside, and it is an outdoor gym. So it is a different concept. It isn't an outdoor gym. It isn't an indoor gym. And they really build their theory and to get people outside, and because of the obesity epidemic, sedentary lifestyles, for a healthier community, we need places where people can go and be outside, be healthy. It's a year round. Was interesting to me, it's year round. It's not just seasonal, that all the equipment there, they said it's all been tested, so it can be used year round. So there's a lot we can share about this and at other meetings. So I'm just really grateful that other counselors are open to the idea and that we'll move on this. That ends my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Danforth.
Any comments on the obesity?
Right.
I saw a lot of head moving.
Soften that blow, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I, as the poster child for sedentary, I can't necessarily, but on the EV chargers, I think asking the question on maintenance, I think was spot on. And who's going to be responsible and who's going to take care of it. I think that's a question that would, I think moving forward, that needs to be answered first before we commit. I think it goes hand in hand, especially with fact that I have come across certain times where I've read articles where chargers have broken down, have had issues and things. So I think it's definitely something that needs to be addressed first, so we know where we're going to be in case it happens. Because we do want to offer, if we offer the service, we want to at least offer a service that is consistent. That, if Bob down the street goes ahead and buys an electric car and he wants to be able to charge it, I think he wants to be able to consistently have a place to be able to do it without having to worry about whether it's up and running this time or next week or next month. As far as the open gym, the outdoor gyms, after seeing Councilor Danforth's email, I did a little bit of a deep dive into it. And I read through the options and looked at them significantly. And though it's not something that I would want to commit taxpayer funds to, if the grants themselves could be found to be able to pay for it. My other question would be after that would be the same thing as you would have with the EV chargers as far as maintenance is concerned, and how the outdoor gym is going to be taken care of. Is it gonna fall under the branch of the Recreation Department? There's some other questions that need, but I think those can be addressed after funding is found as far as how those are gonna be taken care of. But I like the idea. I told Councilor Danforth I like the idea. I'm really kind of on board on it. I think it would add dramatically to a community that really does need physical fitness, especially for our seniors. And I being one of them, I don't get as much exercise as I probably need to or should. So, yeah, it would be something that like I say, it piqued my interest and I would definitely want to move forward on it. As far as, finding out where we can come up with money. The security cameras, I think that's a given. I like the idea of if there's any money left over in the CBD grant to go ahead and use that as a partial payment cameras for the downtown area, at least for Veterans Park. And, possibly, because I don't think we could use them for the cemetery or the compost. But as far as that one phase of security cameras, we could use it for that. I think that was a good investment for it. I'm glad to hear that recycling is getting a little bit of an uptick. Recycling was doing very well until the bottom fell out of it here in Millinocket. People were very faithful as far as taking their recycling out there, whether it be cans, bottles, paper, plastic. We were doing very well, and then the bottom fell out, and China was no longer taking recyclable plastics and things, and it just the amount of revenue that fell from that was terrible. So we closed that part up. Glad to see it start coming back. I think there are a lot of people who still are very interested in recycling and helping the environment. Good job on the elevator to be able to go ahead and get the grant to start the process, and with that and a couple of the funding sources, getting that elevator serviceable, because one, we have the court up here, two, we have our meetings up here, and it just, when you have a building this size, having a working elevator that can easily move people up and down is very important. And I think it's not it's a want, it's a need. And I think we need an elevator that we can depend on being safe, being functional, and providing the best service for our community members moving up to the second floor here or down to the basement. Other than that, I'm all set, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Wood, Council Bragdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Upset about the cameras. Was hoping to have something sooner, but I get it. Things happen. Curious to see what the quote is and if we go out to the bid. Question that may alleviate some of the questions on the EV stations. Is there any warranty that comes to purchasing them? Well, everyone's acting like it's gonna be, we're immediately gonna have to start paying maintenance. Like, what is the warranty look like? Is it 1 year, 5 years, 10?
Get a year on a blow dryer, for God's sake.
Do we get?
I would-
Mics going on?
We haven't ordered them, but I would anticipate that there is some sort of warranty that comes with the purchase. I'm happy to report back once I find that information out. I know that you're much more knowledgeable about some forms of technology than I am, and would certainly invite you if you're available Monday at 2:00, if you want to join me for that consultation. You're welcome to. I'm talking about him. Yeah.
We do security cameras privately through my business as well, so I would be curious to see what they have to say.
Sure.
On top of that, the reason why I mentioned the warranty is extended warranty, because if you bought a car, you purchase extended warranty. That may alleviate the maintenance issues, especially during the winter time. Other than that, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Council Bragdon. I do have a few comments and questions on the manager's report. Concerning the EV chargers, you alluded to that we would own them. So would the revenue that's generated from them go to the library's coffers or go to the municipalities?
That would come to us. Yeah, those are two separate applications, they are going to install one at their location. The revenue from their machine will go to their coffers. We would be installed.
Repeat that one more time.
You really?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. It's two separate, the town's application is a project and the library's application is a project.
So the two EV stations would be separate?
Correct. So there will be, I don't know if they applied for one or two. I don't remember the library. There are two, anything revenue related from from their machines will go to their coffers. Anything from the four that we would install in downtown area go to the town of Millinocket.
And once again, they would be responsible for their maintenance of their machines. We would
Correct.
Not be responsible for that.
Correct.
And
They did need our approval for the installation because the town owns the land that they sit on.
concerning the outdoor gyms, closest one's on Broadway. I actually don't know where that is because I always hang a right off that, and the only attractions I know are Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, KFC, and sometimes Moe's Barbecue. So I take it that's on the left-hand side?
It is. If you take a left off the Broadway exit and head towards State Street or the downtown area, you can drive right past
All
that.
joking aside, this is an outdoor gymnasium. Millinocket, we have 4 seasons, of course. Is this gonna be able to be used during the winter time? I mean, this seems like it would be somewhat of a hazard and.
I don't see asking our public works crew to clear it from snow in the wintertime. It's possible that volunteers could do that.
So it would.
It would
hypothetically
like
be
it-
Used for a portion of the year.
I would imagine it would be more of a 3-season thing than a 4.
And.
Actually,
this
you-
Cycling. I assume that you've done a mud water with Pete on the recycling, so that could probably be a lot of the movement towards.
Oh, I would entirely award all of the recognition to Mudwater
I'm
with
gonna
Pete.
Go down to the public.
Can I just have one moment though? I want to, I noticed that you were holding the pictures from the packet. I would like to bring them up just to show what those two things look like on the screen. And I will do that in just.
You are.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
You may.
On the topic of recycling, I spoke to the manager before the meeting, about reaching out to some businesses in town that deal with trash, about seeing if there's any way to separate cardboard. That may also bring in a very large amount of revenue with cardboard, given that they multiple of them handle very large businesses in town. So that may also help, if they agree to do so. So just food for thought. I would advocate that anybody who is advocating for recycling to reach out to your local businesses and suggest that they do so.
So I apologize that this is the scanned image from our package, but it is in black and white. So this is the offering from the National Fitness Campaign here. You can see it has, it focuses on, the 7 techniques that are used, core strength, the squat, there's different platforms here for different types of exercising and box jumps and maneuvering. There's bending and sit-up related things for core exercises. In the back here, there's different apparatus for it's all body weight exercising related. And then this is the one that's more like what's in Bangor. You can see it's a smaller footprint. I can probably zoom out on that. So we see the whole thing. It does offer some shade, which is nice. And then if you look in kind of around here where my mouse is, it actually provides slightly different types of equipment. So this is like an elliptical Over here, there's a stepper. There's some apparatus you can use to lift and move over there. So just a slightly different type of equipment here, but those are what the two options. This would be National Fitness Campaign, which can actually be doubled in size and offer a blank space on the opposite side where folks in the community could offer yoga classes or PIO classes or outdoor fitness classes, Zumba, whatever it would be, gives a nice space to do that. And then this is the Fit Lot, the other option here. And I'll stop sharing. I'm finished.
All right, thank you, Mr. Manager. Council Danforth.
I just want to add some color to that. It's too bad it's not in color, but if folks want to go to the National Fitness Campaign website, there's lots of color to see. And part of that project, Peter didn't allude to it, is there is an art project involved. So the whole one side of it that you get, or actually maybe both sides, they encourage local artists and that sort of thing to participate. So it's there's more to it than meets the eye on that black and white, what we saw up there. And they also talked about a QR code. What they have on the equipment down there, folks with smartphones, if you just scan the QR code, it will give you, it's an app for different sort of exercises to use there. And they track use of it. That's one way they track use of it through their company. So there's a lot more details to this that we can share ongoing, or if people want to ask me or Peter about it. So thank you.
Thank you, Council Danforth. Council Higgins.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do got another question. Mr. Manager. Like on the big agility one, or actually any of these, how would the town be on if somebody got hurt on them? How does the liability impact the town?
I think that would be similar to our liability coverage at any of our playgrounds or parks or the swimming pool, be the same kind of scenario.
Thank you.
That's what I would assume. Yep. Any other questions from the council? Council Bragdon.
Is the AARP one that was shown the same style that is in Bangor? Is it laid out just the same?
It's at least very similar. I don't have that perfect of a memory, but
No, it's fine. Comparison reason.
very, very similar.
Thank you, Council Bragdon. Council Dan.
I'm sorry, just one more piece of detail. I know people are concerned perhaps about safety. They not recommend, but they require that there's a certain amount of distance between the playground and this equipment so that it's just not a run on of the playground. So younger kids don't just run on to it all the time and think that it's an extension of the playground. So it really is for teenagers, older children and adults. And they part of their requirement in placing this and actually working with us is that we designate a place and there's some sort of boundary between the two, whether it's hedges or fencing, or there's some sort of boundary between the two for some of that same reasons that you're talking about.
Any other councilors? Down to the public on the manager's report.
Scott Levitt, 330 Congress Street. I just want to get ahead of this game a little bit. About the airport, you're looking to build houses there. Is that going to be in parcels sold to people, or is it going to be a company that comes in, builds them and rents them? And also, is it where it's an AD zoning, is that permittable with the swampland and everything else? Is there going to be enough room for that? Like I said, I'm just concerned that, if there's a corporation that comes in and builds or is already set up and builds 3 or 4 housing complexes and rent those, is that permittable in that zone and everything else that's going to be considered? And as far as the exercise and everything else, I think it's a lot of money. And if we're gonna be serious about it, it's probably get a survey out there to see how many people's gonna use it to just get a percentage. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
That's a good idea, Mr. Levitt.
I
you
can
wanna
answer
it?
that.
Go ahead and handle that one.
We're not discussing airport land. We're discussing a parcel of land that actually begins over on Central Street. Just past, opposite the Chamber of Commerce Visitors Center. And that land, so it'd be just before, you break the tree line coming into town. And that land reaches all the way back to the beginning of the airport. So the two parcels abut each other. The opportunity for housing development is on it's currently owned by the Elks right now, but it's closer out to Central Street. So it's not airport development and it's not airport land. It would just be town of Millinocket developable land. We don't have a solid plan yet for what the housing development options are. But I doubt that it would be given to a developer to offer rental. I think I would be proposing more of a individual buyer and builder operation out there.
Thank you. Ms. Medor on Zoom,
Yes,
name and address, please.
I couldn't hear you.
Name and address, please.
Patricia Medor, 215 Bowden Street, Millinocket. How do you plan on protecting the outdoor gym stuff? And because I mean, we do have winter and this has been an unusual one and we haven't had what we normally have, but we still need to protect your investment in inclement weather. And I don't know if there's anything that can rust or whatever. So I'm just curious what the plan is for that.
Thank you. And I had concerns about that as well, Mr. Manager.
Thank you.
Yeah, so there are, again, this is just a very entry level conversation to the discussion. Nothing has really been committed or advanced in any way. But the design of these complexes withstands 4 seasons of weather. Like I said, the closest one is in Hamden. They have almost as bad of a winter as we do. The materials they're made out of and I imagine the whatever paint and coating is on top of them would protect them from the elements. So I don't believe would have to do anything additional to prepare them for the winter season. That's a great question.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, Ms. Medor. Any other public comment?
Jimmy Biss, 32 Forest Avenue. First, I want to say I do not support the idea of building a new fire station at this time. I can remember when this came up years and years ago, the town was a lot better shape than it was now. We had a much higher population. We had mills running. Tax rate was lower. Now we look at our town, we're still losing population. We're getting older. The tax rate is high. But we're still losing population. And this is not the time to be building and spending this kind of money on building a new fire station. Down the road, maybe, but right now I don't support it. One of the things the manager said about access to the airport and the future growth of the airport tied in so you can access the airport for future growth of the airport. One thing we know, as we all know, is that there's a movement right now. The federal government is trying to reduce the size of the airport. Is that right? I mean, that's a serious concern. Here we've been all these years trying to grow this airport, one of our greatest assets, and now the federal government wants to reduce the size of the airport. So that argument doesn't hold any water anymore right now, which I hope doesn't happen. But this is not the time to be spending money on building a new fire station. The other thing, the, the EV charging stations. I think it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. You know, they're pushing this, a program here when we don't have the infrastructure to begin with. But for the government, whether it's town, state, or federal, to get involved with spending taxpayer money to put in charging stations for electric vehicles shouldn't happen. When gas powered vehicles came into play back years ago, who built the gas stations? When Circle K redid their gas pumps up there, who did that? Wasn't the government. It was private enterprise. Let the private enterprise do the building these charging stations. Let's get out of that. That's ridiculous. The idea we're going to maintain it all. I don't want my taxpayer money going to building charging stations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bisk. Any other public comment?
Hi. Sandra Sullivan, 104 Sunset Drive. I'm very concerned about the infrastructure of the town. Rather, it's very nice to have a dog park. It's very nice to have the tennis courts redone. It's very nice to have an outdoor gym. I called the tax assessor's office this morning, and please understand, she was not complaining to me. This is my impression. With the new property tax abatement program, she and I had discussed it in the past, and it was her feeling that maybe it would be tied to April 1st, where everything else is. So April 1st, right around the corner. I called this morning to say, have you heard anything? How is this going to play out from now on? And by the way, I thought I was supposed to get some kind of paper in the mail saying, okay, you've reviewed my application and I'm either accepted or not. And her answer to me was, well, I'm only on G. There were well over 100 people applied for that program in this town. It's going to be for this calendar year. She's on G. I'm on S. I figure about 2030, she might get to me. We need to make sure we have employees in this town that can keep up and keep the money coming in. We don't, and we need that before we need the recreational. I would much rather exercise inside without the black flies in my mouth. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Any other public comment? Seeing none.
We're not talking about spending local taxpayer money on any of these projects. That is entirely untrue.
You're not talking about spending it now, it's coming out of a grant, but next year, after it's built, then taxpayers do have to pay for the upkeep and the maintenance of it. So it does involve taxpayer money.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Any other public comment? Thank you. And moving past the manager's report. Order number 42-2023. Councilor Pelletier, would you please read?
Certainly. Order number 42-2023, execution of the town warrant for March 9th, 2023. It is ordered that the town warrant for March 9th, 2023 in the amount of $73,841.98 is hereby approved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Pelletier, seconded by Councilor Madore. Any heavy hitters?
Certainly. $2,500 for Central Maine Pyrotechnics. That's half of the fireworks down payment. $17,853.77 for diesel fuel to Dead River. $2,318.82 to Hoyle Tanner Associates for the airport master plan. $4,745.86 for Maine Resources Recovery Association. It's a transfer station demo debris. $2,050.30 Maine Technology Group LLC. It's information technology services. $2,892.92 municipal review committee, tipping fees, $2,976.68 New England salt, $1,807.59 for E-Buck Construction, and that's Bates Street, Elm Street project. $19,901.50, Town of East Millinocket, second half of the rec contract.
Thank you, Council Pelletier. Any council discussion? Seeing none down in the public. On Zoom. All those in favor? Unanimous, 6-0. Order number 43-2023. Council Madore, would you please read?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Order number 43-2023, providing for execution of the wastewater for March 9th, 2023. It is ordered that the wastewater warrant for March 9th, 2023 in the amount of $121,314.76 hereby approved.
Second.
Motion made by Council Madore, seconded by Council Bragdon. Council Madore. any
Just a
heavy
couple of
hitters?
them. $4,569 going to Exactitude Incorporated. That's the door replacement on the pump station. $77,918.09. That's Maine Municipal Farm Bank. That's the loan payment. $6,609.33 Northeast Paving. That's the paving in the new development. That's the finishing up of that. And then finally, $26,672.09. That's going to T-Buck Construction. That finishes off Elm Street and Bates Street.
Thank you, Council Madore. Council discussion on the order. Seeing none down to the public. Via Zoom, once again, seeing none. All those in favor? 6-0, unanimous. You. Order number 44-2023. Council Higgins, would you please read?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Order number 44-2023, providing for the approval of transfer resolution authorizing transfer of franchise agreement from Beeline Inc. to Spectrum Northeast LLC, whereas Spectrum Northeast LLC entered into an agreement with Beeline Cable on December 30th, 2022, acquiring all assets of the company, including the franchise agreements. It is ordered that the Millinocket Town Council authorizes the transfer resolution acknowledging Millinocket's franchise agreement with Beeline Inc. being transferred to Spectrum Northeast LLC.
Second.
Motion made by Council Higgins, seconded by Council Bragdon. Open it up to council discussion on the order. Council Bragdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For those that are unaware, I've also just found out that Spectrum is acquiring all of Beeline's assets. This is more of a formality than anything. It's already going to happen. This is really, again, just a formality. It's basically transferring our agreement from Beeline to Spectrum. Some people aren't happy with it, and I get it, but it is what it is. That's how business works. Unfortunately, we don't have say in Beeline's business. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Bragdon. Council Madore.
This is, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is merely a bookkeeping process for the two parties involved, Beeline and Spectrum. We've already agreed in principle with a 10-year agreement with Beeline Cable for the franchise fee, franchise agreement for this town. This just simply transfers it to Spectrum under the same provisions and the same agreements that we have. So there's nothing here that, I mean, this is, they need this to for bookkeeping purposes and things, but certainly this is not going to make or break anything. So it's just, like I say, it's just a formality, and moving forward, it is what it is. We are one of a multitude of communities within the Northeast that Spectrum has gone ahead and taken over smaller cable companies. And so who knows, maybe, just maybe, might be an uptick in service. I hope it's an uptick in broadband and speed, because that would be nice. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Council Madore. Any other council comment? Seeing none down to the public.
Tom Malcolm, 73 School Street. I hope, Councilman Madore, you're right. It's an uptake in service and business, and I hope that our citizens can afford it. Spectrum is very expensive. I don't understand why the council has no say in this. You gave them the right to have that contract in Millinocket to Beeline. You're telling me they have a right to transfer that to another company and there's nothing we can do about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Malcolm. Any other public comment? None via Zoom. Seeing none, I do have a question for the manager. Other than the name change, is the document that we signed off on all the same? No changes?
That's correct. I'll point out, we do actually have Spencer Hoffman from Pretty Flaherty present. I believe he's part of the legal team that would be available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman. Can you hear me?
Hello, yep, I'm here.
Hello. This is Council Dume, Chair Dume here, and could you shed any light upon the council and the public about the contract and the acquisition from Spectrum to Beeline? Can you speak on that at all?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Are there any specific questions that I could answer with regard to the transaction?
Yes, so there's a portion of the public that are concerned about rate increases.
So as far as, so we represent Beeline, the seller here, the current operator. As far as the charter side, I couldn't speak to what, will happen following the sale with regard to charter's service. I thought there might be someone from the charter team here tonight, but I don't believe they are here to answer those questions. So I'm not best suited to, to speak to the charter side of things.
I got you. So you could only speak to the seller's portion, which would, no disrespect, would be inconsequential for the questions probably that the public and the council has at this moment. So I apologize.
Yeah, I mean,
for
I'd be happy
wasting
to
time
answer.
unless
Yeah.
somebody wants to know.
Oh, go ahead.
Council Bragdon.
I may be able to answer your question. Just follow up. Are you referring to customers of Beeline and their? Okay, I can answer that after questions are done with Mr. Hoffman.
Anybody from the public or the council have any questions for Mr. Hoffman, who represents Beeline? Seeing none?
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, Council Madore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hoffman, as far as service is concerned, is the Spectrum, by taking over this agreement, have any plans on upgrading, say, fiber optic cable, equipment, whatever? I realize there's something in there, but I want to hear. One thing to read, it's another thing to hear. Do you have any, make sure that they have any upgrades or of the services that will be provided within the community?
Again, I'm not sure what charter is going to do post-closing. Yeah, again, I wish, if a member of the charter team was here, they'd be better suited to answer that. In terms of the prior question regarding any changes to the franchise agreement, there are no changes to the originally negotiated agreement. So this is simply a transfer to charter from Beeline.
If I could follow up, Mr. Chairman, if for whatever reason this order was not passed, this would not necessarily hold up the sale of Beeline to Spectrum at this time, would it?
It would. It would.
It would hold it up.
Yep,
Okay. Thank you.
but I should remind you, the language of the agreement states that, the council consent is required, but that consent can't be unreasonably withheld, delayed, or denied.
You want me to speak further to the questions that I'm gonna step down then from formality reasons. Matt Bragdon, Bragdon Technology, 10 Balsam Drive, Suite C. From my 6 years being in business and experiencing Spectrum, the answer to your question is yes and no. It will depend on, what, if you read into the statements that they've made, they're planning on bringing 1 gig service to town, which is extremely fast. It's unheard of in the area. Medway obviously has it. It is a great speed. Like I said before, some people love it, some people hate it. It's really who you ask. It is extremely expensive, yes, but you're also paying for a service that is new to the area. And it also depends on the package you buy. You can go for the lowest package that is offered and pay around the same price that you may be paying now. But if you plan on upgrading, you're going to pay for it. It also depends on if, for example, there is a grandfathered speed that Beeline is offering for people, which I experience on a daily basis with elderly people that don't renew their contracts or look at their contracts with Beeline. They may no longer exist with Spectrum. They may. I mean, it really depends on what a person has for speed, if they're interested in keeping it. All of those play a factor into what you're going to be paying for a speed. If you read the document, Mr. Medor or Councilor Medor, they do plan on making upgrades. They did the same thing in East and Medway, or parts of East and Medway. It's not completely in East. And I have full faith that they'll do it here. That's one of their biggest sellers is their 1 gig down. They'd be crazy not to offer it to people up here. And like I said, it's extremely fast. The fastest speed in town, if I'm not mistaken, is 400, 500 down. So you're talking about doubling that to customers. That being said, the point I made in the beginning about this isn't going to stop anything was not in reference to the agreement between the town of Millinocket and Beeline. It was more to the acquisition of Beeline from Spectrum. The contract, I'm sure we have some leeway in, but the acquisition stake, we should not be telling Beeline how to do their business. The contract is a different story. That may be something we should review in the future and see if that's something we're interested in doing, or the council would be interested in doing. But if there's any other questions about speed, phone service, I'd be happy to answer it.
Thank you, Mr. Bragdon. I would be interested in a new contract if Spectrum were to come to us with their contract. That way we know what we're dealing with and the public knows what we're dealing with, and they can have a representative speak to us. Not that I don't value your opinion and your business, but I think the public would be interested in hearing from a rep. And like Councilor Medor said, to hear it in words.
I completely agree.
Than reading it. So instead of, and you're absolutely right. Business can acquire business, and it's none of our business to say what they do. But it is our business to sign contracts that are in the best interest of the town of Millinocket. So I would be interested in hearing from a representative from them, and if they would like to present us with a new contract, once the acquisition is made, then we'll deal with that.
That actually leads into another point that I was going to bring up, if I may, Mr. Chairman. We had talked about increasing or changing internet providers, so maybe this is a discussion we can have at the same time if we're going to talk about renewing contracts, is looking at internet speeds and what they could offer the municipality at all our locations. Just food for thought, if we do decide to take that route, that may be an option to look at, is going to them for internet or phone or all of the above.
Thank you. Council.
I take it that we have no option here. This contract been agreed to. Can't go requesting a renewal or a new contract. Agreed to a 10-year contract. It's being transferred to a new owner, which is out of our purview.
Then why are we voting?
to allow the name change on the paperwork, basically formality.
This is formality.
All right. All right, so we did the council down to the public, back to the council. Council,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I appreciate the clarity from the other counselors that it's a formality, but I also appreciate, Mr. Chairman, what you're saying, that perhaps Spectrum can then come visit with us and talk with us, and perhaps that we can form that relationship and talk about services or contract, any differences. But yeah, it's as was mentioned, it's too bad somebody from the charter team isn't here to answer these questions. It would have been timely, I think. Thank you.
well, also that, I'll get right back to you. I don't know how this affects also our local television station with Cat TV as well. So I mean, we just don't know what we don't know at this point. But
Again, that contract is spelled out. We get the same money in that contract that we've been getting all along.
Exactly.
We're the ones choosing CAT, nobody else. And on the issue of internet access, there is GWI that's coming in with same speeds. So within a year, you'll have an option to Spectrum.
so with that, any other council comments or questions? We can move to a vote. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3. All those opposed? 1, 2, and 1 abstention, I'm assuming. It passes 3 to 2 to 1. And moving on to reports and communications. Warrant Committee for March 23rd, 2023, council meeting will be Council Bragdon and Council Danforth. Do I have any chair committee reports? No over here, no over here, yes, over here.
Just that the Charter Review Committee will be meeting on Wednesday, March 15th at 4:30 in Town Manager's office. Zoom links are available all over the social media. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Pelletier. At this moment, we will be holding 2-minute public comment. This is a opportunity for the public, whether they're here or via Zoom, and can share their video. Please keep your comments to 2 minutes, and council may engage if they so choose, but it's optional.
Sandy Sullivan, 104 Sunset Drive. Mr. Chairman, may I please address Mr. Higgins?
Yes.
Mr. Higgins, I've been very active in council meetings in my previous town that I lived in and here. I have not always agreed with every councilor's decision. That's their opinion. That's my opinion, and that's fine. That's the way it works. The last town meeting, there was, or the last town council meeting, there was an agenda of the manager's contract, and you voiced objection to it, which that's your opinion, and that didn't, like I said, I have my opinion, you have yours, and you voted your way. I then, however, read a very vile comment from Melanie Higgins. And that made me realize that your agenda may not necessarily be in the interest of the town.
Ms. Sullivan, let's keep this not personal, and that's somebody's family member that's not presently here, and that's not.
I'm not going to say anything about her. I don't know her.
Well,
I don't know Mr. I don't know him.
He's separate from Ms. Higgins. So.
The comment was addressed to him, though. I'm just saying,
Was it a Facebook comment
It was a chat
or a
comment.
chat comment? Well, that's, once again, that's not a reflection of Council Higgins.
I would just ask, I've never had to question the motive of anyone who served, whether they were thinking of the town or not.
I'm gonna have to stop this.
And
now.
I would just ask that.
Ms.
you-
Sullivan,
Okay.
that's. Sorry.
Mr. Chairman. Yes. The direct comments to a counselor in that manner is,
And that's why I stopped it.
I appreciate it. Anybody would take the time to serve on this board does so with the highest of integrity, character, and the community as a whole as being their number one priority. And we cannot and should not be held responsible for family members who obviously may or may not agree with us or have their own opinions and should not have to go ahead and defend ourselves through those streams. So I'm
gonna.
thank you. Yeah,
I'm gonna
I just
stop
wanted
that
to
all
take,
right
yeah.
there because you know what? This is live. This is being recorded. This is going to go in the paper. This is a little embarrassing at this moment, so I'm gonna stop that. Does anybody have any public comment? 2 minutes, Mr. Bisk.
Jimmy Biss, 32 Forest Avenue. I just want to say that, at the last meeting, when I heard that Brookfield was going to be here, I thought we were going to be talking about the Brookfield tax abatement. And that's an issue I've been waiting for, well, this has been going on for up to 2 years now, at least well over a year. What's concerning to me is that we've never heard a thing about the tax abatement. The public deserves to know what's going on with tax abatement, so I reached out to the chairman. I said, what's going on with tax abatement? And of course, the chairman was not involved in this, and many of you weren't involved with this when this came about. And what came back to me was that, from the manager, was that one of the things was the terms was going to be favorable to the town of Millinocket moving forward. I think that was your exact words in that. What troubles me is that I cannot believe, it's hard for me to believe that dealing with Brookfield files a tax abatement and the town of Millinocket comes out favorable. Brookfield never would have gone that direction had they come out again, not in their favor. That's not Brookfield. Brookfield is not one of my favorite companies, and there's reasons for that, if anybody knows the history of Brookfield. Anyways, kind of wear two hats here with this Brookfield thing, but one of the things I feel the town should have done right from the beginning with this, when the Brookfield filed the tax abatement, is what we heard here tonight. All right, we'll support your dam relicensing, but you drop the tax abatement. That would be proper negotiations. We'll support you, but this goes two ways here. We'll support you, but you drop your tax abatement. I asked the council that this needs to be put on the agenda. The public deserves to know what the outcome of this tax abatement has, what it is. We know nothing. And that's not right. Where's the transparency here? This isn't right. This should have been brought to the public at some point. I cannot believe that all those executive sessions down there, they are all, what can I say, legal? I'd like to know more about all these meetings we've had. And the only thing when I Googled about the tax abatement in the town of Millinocket was on the manager report on the tax assessor talking about must include Brookfield, worked on appeal from Brookfield. That's all there's been over the years. And here I find out all of a sudden that I've been waiting for, that it's already settled. So what's a settlement? Nobody knows. Even some of you don't even know there was an abatement or a settlement. Not right. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bisk. All right, any other public comment? Seeing none via Zoom, seeing none. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made by Council Madore, seconded by Councilor Danforth. All those in favor? All those opposed?
Let us
5-1.
vote on.
We're now adjourned.
I'll still vote. As far as the debate. I just, we can talk about it. I don't believe that, bringing it up, this, yeah, is appropriate. Because the abatement is, as she